In the grand scheme of things, Genesis is still sort of the new kid on the block when it comes to the luxury automotive lineups. However, in today's video, I'm going to explore why the GV80 is such a great competitor to the Lexus RX. Make sure you stay to the end because there's a lot of things about this vehicle that really impress me. I'm Dustin Mason from Performance Lexus in St. Catharines. Make sure you hit like and subscribe, as well as find me on Instagram at @TheDustinMason for more related content, as well as letting me know if there's any other videos like this you want to see. Okay, so Genesis as a brand has been popping up on my radar for the last couple of years. In fact, every month I sit down with our sales staff and go over the previous month's numbers for all of our local competitive brands. And watching Genesis slowly climbing those ranks for being a new brand in the luxury industry. I mean, this is sort of an industry of competitors, BMW, Mercedes, Audi, and Lexus, that have a huge history and reputations sort of backing them. Discovering the GV80 and going through it, I can already tell that Genesis knew that and thought we need to come into the market guns a-blazing to be able to compete with those historical brands. And that's when I decided to compare it to our Lexus RX, which has like been the bread and butter of Lexus for, you know, a couple decades now. And being that they're both mid-size SUVs, yes, the GV80 is going to be a little bit bigger in some areas in terms of space and sometimes even price. However, the two of them are closer than I think. And even before this video, in the comment section, I always got messages saying, make sure you review a GV70, make sure you review a GV80, because the audience is looking at both Lexus and Genesis. So today we're gonna see the comparison. Let's talk about the styling. Now, one thing that no one can knock Genesis for, in my opinion, is that really nice front end. So we have a very classy, massive front grille. I mean, it does remind me a lot of the Lexus spindle grille on the F-Sport models. In fact, as we get lower, same with the bottom, really reminds me of it with the black. This top part is like it's like a chrome plastic, which I think suits the chrome trim that's all around it. I will say, and I've heard a lot of other people say this too, I really wish we lived in an area that you didn't need this front plate, because this front end looks way better without it. Like most cars, to be honest. But yeah, being that it's right smack dab in the middle of this beautiful grille, definitely is not doing it any favors. Also, we have all the sensors sort of hidden. So like even this big sensor here for the things like the radar cruise control, the parking sensors, none of them are obnoxious. I mean, maybe that front camera is pretty obvious, but the rest are pretty hidden. And we have some decorations at the bottom with some passive aero. Like I can actually stick my hand in there. I can tell it's probably going to the turbocharged intercooler in the back there. And same with on the sides. I do notice some active aero there as well. So we have these daytime running lights that, again, very luxurious. There is a little bit of a texture to them when you get up close. I mean, it's interesting because at first it just looks like the texture is almost like a thicker frosting, but as you get to the side, it's almost like those elements become a bit more three-dimensional. So with the headlights on, we can see there's a ton of little elements there. And it's kind of funny because in the industry, it used to be, you know, just one headlight or two or three. And then we've seen these luxury brands add more and more and more. And it does create a little bit of a dimension to the headlights, I think. The first 4 or 5 are doing actual headlighting. The ones as we get to the outside are kind of there just as like added decoration. There's 9 on the top, 9 on the bottom. Again, there's lots of details to them. They're kind of like these little cubes that have the actual LED behind it and project out. So I'm sure that's really good at nighttime. And also, as you probably saw when I hit unlock, it does change. The daytime running light is the actual signal. So again, looks really good. I'm pretty sure that this is the highest package. I don't know about, you know, the lower packages if it has the same headlight, but on this one, super classy and looks amazing. If we are to compare this to the RX, I mean, we're still seeing that same luxury styling. The daytime running light is more of that frosted look. There's not much dimension to it, but it is super crisp. Headlights, I mean, we have 3 of pretty much the bigger version of what we saw in the Genesis. And these ones have the intelligent adaptive headlights. I'm pretty sure the Genesis has that exact same thing. I haven't tried it. And then obviously we have some curb lighting fog lights at the end. With the Lexus, we're seeing a little bit less is more when it comes to that front grille. So it used to be that we had lots of hatching and stuff like this, and this is the executive. And now we're seeing a little bit more of that EV body language spilling over into all of the lineup. And what I mean by that is sort of this grille fading away here at the top and at the sides into more bumper. So we're seeing a little bit less aero in terms of like, you know, things that suck in air, because EVs don't need to do that. And having it more streamlined for things like fuel efficiency. And that's what we see with the RX. I mean, there is still a little bit of air ducts going on at the bottom and in the middle. However, the bumper itself is pretty smooth once it fades out of that grille. Doing the side profile of the GV80, we know it's bigger. We know it's a little bit longer. It turns out it's also a little bit taller, and it is a little bit wider. Pretty close, but it is wider. So you will notice that a little bit when comparing it to the RX. One thing that I love so much is this light here. Like, I've seen these Genesis on the road, and I've always seen that little decoration on the side. I didn't realize it lit up. It really reminds me of JDM. And what I mean by that is, like, on my JDM Supra, there's a light on that fender for the signal. I think it was like, you know, a law in certain countries. And I like that Genesis has it here. I kind of wonder if the new ES has that as well, because you sort of see some design there. Okay, for wheels, we have a 22-inch wheel setup on this particular model. It is the fully loaded one, so I'm sure on the other ones it has a little bit smaller. Decent sized brake there. It looks like at least a 6-piston caliper. For the most part, the wheel itself has a really nice design to it, nothing too crazy here. And actually, surprisingly, not a lot of wheel gap, which I always think creates a really cool stance for a car like this. Looking down the body, we don't have a ton of like sharp lines. We have some subtle lines, like there is a line that sort of goes all the way from the front to the back, and it almost fades a little bit as it goes. And then beneath that, there's one that starts at the back and then fades into a smooth panel towards the front. I did hear that those types of lines are really good for structural integrity, like for a side impact. Towards the bottom, we have, it's pretty much a mirror. It's not even chrome, it's just a full-on mirror, which is great to check out my hair, as long as the water spots don't settle on there too much. When it captures the light, it probably draws your attention to it, I'm sure. Not much of a body kit. It actually kind of goes in and under instead of like out and flares out. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, there's a lot of things I love about this GV80, and I'm gonna show you one right now. It is the soft closed doors. That's right. Mid-size SUV, soft closed doors. Now, I think this is like the flagship for Genesis, so that makes sense, because in our flagships with Lexus, you get soft close in like, you know, the LX or the LS. But the fact that it's here is just a lovely thing. And also the door itself, super heavy, really solid. Oh, just sounds very luxurious, and I'm very impressed with it. In terms of height of that car, I mean, I'm 6'1". I could check to make sure there's no bird poop on the top, but barely, because it is a really tall vehicle. And even that back door is pretty massive. I find getting in and out of the back very easy because of how tall that is. And again, very super solid. Design language, as we get to the very back, I mean, we have a little bit big of a panel here because it is a 3-row. Reminds me of the RXL from back in the day, but it is a 3-row, and there is a little window here in case you have anybody in those jump seats. Over to the RX, and the RX is my baby right now because I just got an RX luxury demo that I'm driving, and I love it so much. So let's talk about the wheels. We have 21-inch wheels on the RX. This is an executive, fully jammed model, and this one's kind of like a multi-spoke, and I like when Lexus has so many different wheel options. I'm driving a luxury, has a totally different wheel than this. The executive has this multi-spoke. It all looks good, and actually not a ton of wheel gap either, although we have this little fender thing on there, but still overall pretty similar, except for the Genesis is 22. Height-wise, I mean, I already know because I read ahead of time that the RX roofline is a little bit lower than that GV80, and it is, but again, I'm 6 foot tall. I never have problems getting in and out of the RX. In fact, it's kind of like the perfect height for me. And with the RX, we don't have soft close, but we have a really solid door that has the electronic door latch. So instead of like pulling a handle, there's just a little button inside that handle. And same thing when we go to leave. There's a pressure point that you just sort of do in one motion instead of like pulling a handle and using your elbow and stuff like that, which I've always been a good fan of. We do have some chrome trim around the windows, just like on the Genesis, and our rear door opens very nice and wide, and again, is easy to get into. Although I will say there's a little bit of an angle here because that sporty sort of like flow that goes to the back. You know, midway here, it's got a little bit more angle to it. There's a little bit more of a flare to the bottom and a little bit more of a body kit on the bottom to make it look, I think it's a little bit sportier. If I had to say first impressions, RX versus the Genesis, the RX does look a little bit sportier. Over to the back of the GV80, I do love the way this looks, and it's pretty unlike anything else out there right now. We have these taillights that are sort of off in the corners, which is really all you need a taillight to be, I guess, when you think about it. Lots of dimension to it, and I think that's really important when it comes to bodywork. So, I mean, I see an outline in the actual taillight itself, and then we have these long lines, kind of like the front daytime running lights for our signal. So it's like a combination lamp with a little bit of like a sequential setup. We have some more grilling happening at the sides here. Is that what I think it is? I think that's the reverse light, which is pretty cool right at the bottom there. Some chrome, which is really classy in this color combination as well. 4-wheel drive 3.5T, which I'll talk about later when we talk about the engine. And then Genesis spelled out across the back. I feel like at first Genesis didn't have that. Maybe I'm just mistaken. We're seeing that a lot in the industry right now. Like Lexus is the same. It's Lexus, spelt probably from the same supplier, which is all right. And then GV80 in the bottom left corner. This is interesting. So we have an exposed wiper, and the button to open the trunk is actually on the wiper, which I didn't realize before. Then we have our 3-row SUV with a little nicely presented kit here for that. So with the 3rd row up, there actually is a little bit of space here, which is surprising because a lot of times manufacturers struggle with that part. And if we fold these down, oops, I just folded down the middle row too. You can fold down all of the rows from back here, by the way. And then we have this massive space. I would probably just use it with the 3rd row folded down until I needed something. And with that, you do have a lot of cargo space here as well, which is nice. And I mean, because it's got that 3rd row, there's like little armrests and stuff back here. I don't know how to open that. Oh, it's right there. So you could always have little small things back there, and they have their own climate control, which is really cool. And vents all the way back here too, which is pretty impressive. So decent size to get stuff in and out of. It looks like we have probably a little bit of storage here too. I'm just gonna pop it up and take a peek, because I'm not sure. Yeah, so we have a tonneau cover, we got some storage, looks like maybe a tire kit, and some books and stuff like that. And actually, you guys, this Genesis tire mobility kit is like leather, and it's like, it looks nice. It's not it's not just utility, it actually looks really good. So far, this is doing a good job. Back to the RX, and this is where the back end of your vehicle does matter, because even though both are beautiful, I'm noticing some big differences. The RX is more plain and more sporty, where the Genesis is a little bit more bold. So what we have here on the Lexus is that taillight that goes right from one side to the other and underlines Lexus. Really reminds me of like Porsche is another brand that does sort of a similar design language to the back end. Where on the Genesis, I would compare it more to like the Bentley back end. And don't forget, on the RX, our wiper is tucked underneath this. So it's actually hidden, it's not exposed like on the Genesis, so it does have a nice swooping motion and just adds to that plainness. And then we just have the RX 350 all-wheel drive, a little bit of color changing towards the bottom there, but nothing too crazy. And then space-wise, I mean, still a lot of usable space. We don't have that 3rd row, so maybe that gave us a little bit more floor space. I'm not too sure. Always really easy to fold down those seats from using buttons, just like on the Genesis. And width-wise, probably very similar. That Genesis is a little bit longer, so I wouldn't be surprised if the cubic feet of it is longer than the RX. So now sitting in the Genesis, and let me tell you, it's good. There's a lot of really nice details here. I said that as soon as I got home from driving it today, when I brought it to the dealership. I was like, they just did such a good job. So let me show you some of the things. One of them, which seems so silly, but I noticed right away, and again, I'm Mr. Lexus, don't forget. So when I pay a compliment to another brand, I try to be very unbiased. Even the signal switch is good. Like, it just feels different. It feels higher end. And that is to say with a lot of the switches. Turning on the headlights is an experience. And one of the cool things that Genesis thought of is even when you're turning on something like the headlights, like we all have to like look at the stock of the headlights to see which one we're in, and then we just guess. And with most brands, they just use the generic headlight switch from like all of their cars. With Genesis, on the headlight switch itself, there's a detail of like, are you an auto, high beam, low beam, whatever, but they take it a step further. Anything you change shows up on the screen, because why not? It's an infinity screen that goes from the multimedia right into the display cluster, and I'll talk pros and cons about that later, but why not have everything on there? And what I noticed before that, silly enough, is when I reached down to adjust my seat, because I'm a little bit tall, even before I touched any button at all, I'm just feeling around down there, I could feel and see which switch does what on the screen. And it's like, why aren't other car brands doing that? Because especially being the first time in this car, I don't know which switch does which and where my fingers are. I'm just like feeling around down there. I'm blind, but I can see it on the screen. And that is so smart, Genesis. And this is what I'm talking about. Genesis knew that they have competition. They have competition with a loyal database. So doing these little things to the consumer make it make sense to try a brand like this. So speaking of materials, I mean, inside we have kind of like an open pore stone look, two-tone, with this really nice burgundy, brownish, reddish leather interior. The seats themselves, super solid. I love the diamond stitch panels. I think it always just adds a little bit of structure to the seat, I find. There's a little bit of plastic, but none of it feels super cheap. Some pieces remind me of other cars, like some of it reminds me of Mercedes, like on the steering wheel here. And in the center, I mean, we have a train select where you can go from eco to normal to sport to, I think, like a custom mode. And that switch is interesting because instead of just like clicking, it's got a spring in there. So it actually just kind of like moves back. It's got auto park featuring, it's got bird's eye view, which works amazing. It's very high def. And then we have my first gripe of the car. And again, I don't have many gripes with this car. I do really think they did a great job. Our gear shift, which is really lovely to use. It's like, just like a little wheel. It feels great. It's almost like a glass exterior. And then you just press park to put it in park. My gripe is actually with the fact that just moving up a few inches is how you control the multimedia, and it's the same movement. And I kind of thought that that's a little silly because like, I know some guests might get those kind of confused and end up, you know, trying to turn off their Nickelback and ending up in reverse. But that's just an old joke. You know, that would probably be my only gripe. But I mean, once you get used to it, I guess you would just like know that lower is the gear shift and upper is the way you control the media. And by the way, the multimedia system seems good. Like I only played with it for a little bit. There seems to be so many layers to the system. Maps, destination, phone projection, phone setup, 3D setup, which kind of like is just like a more animated version of being able to like see what the car offers. There's this cool feature called Mood Curator. And if you click on it, you can choose between vitality, delight, care, comfort, and depending on what you choose. So like, let's do delight, because I think that's a fun one. And it'll tell you it's gonna do music, it's gonna do lighting, the ambient lighting, and some of them even project a scent outside. So there's like a canister you can fill up with like a perfume or a fragrance. So let's just hit start and I'll show you, and it's a good test of the sound system, which is, by the way, Bang & Olufsen, which is amazing. Just a happy time. The surround sound is really good. It has the reference setting or the surround setting, so depending on what you want to listen to. But what a cool little... I mean, it's just good. Imagine just having a bad day, driving home, can't decide what XM radio station to put on or what playlist to put on, and you can just put on some delightful. It's good, it's cool. I'm seeing a lot of car brands do this, especially the EVs are doing stuff like that because they need to entertain their guests while they charge, but I think that's cool. I like it. Okay, this little panel opens up, and we have a wireless charger here. We have USB-C, we have actually two USB-Cs. And I always like a car that you can just tuck away your phone because I'm super addicted to mine. So I like to get it out of sight. Cup holders have some ambient lighting to it. Armrest opens up 2 ways, and that's hilarious. I thought it was so shallow at first. And then I realized, oh, the tray comes out and then it goes all the way down up to like my elbow. So lots of storage there, nice lighting. And it's got like a velvet sort of like interior to it. Then we have this little panel, which is easy to miss, but it shows all of our climate controls. So heated and cooled seats. We have our fragrance button that if it was full, we could hit. We have our passenger one. That's super easy. And then we have some quick shortcuts for things on the radio, like pulling up nav, quick radio media. It's always important to know where your hazards are. And then an actual tune knob, which is rare, I feel like these days, and a volume knob as well. A couple vents above that sort of, you know, are just your standard issue. And then that massive OLED screen. So interesting enough, it's very sharp. And I thought it was very Mercedes S-Class like, going from one end to the other and having it all flush. And then I realized I do miss a little bit of dimension there, but I mean, maybe I'd get over that because it is really nice to look at. And it makes the dash look really clean and organized. On the steering wheel itself, I mean, nothing too crazy here. We have some controls and customizations to get on the gauge cluster version. This is so Mercedes. I need to review a Mercedes and just compare. I think they're pretty much the same. Sometimes with these types of cars, we'll see literally the same part. Like you know, for instance, the mirror is one of those digital ones that show over your camera at the back. It's like right out of a Lexus. Like it's the exact part, it seems. And I wonder if that's the same with some of these parts for the steering wheel and stuff like that, because they did do a really good job. On the left, we just have some dimmer switch. Nothing too crazy there. Up here, sunglass holder, heck yes. And it's like kind of silver, which is nice. That's just different. Some regular controls for things like map lights and what have you. Overall, really good. Oh, by the way, the headliner is almost like an Alcantara. So the A pillars are kind of like a softer Alcantara, and then the roof liner is a little bit more dense than that. It feels a little bit different. But overall, the seats are amazing. The armrest is really good. The steering wheel looks good. There is a little secret feature here. I can move the passenger seat forward and backward, which is very Lexus LS-like. We see that in cars that are executive class cars, so that the passenger in the back can move the passenger in the front up. And that brings me to, let's check out that back seat. Okay, so sitting in the back of the GV80, already there's so many things I love, so many little details. So one of them is curtains that are powered and go up. Yes, certain RX packages have curtains in the back that you can manually do, but only our LS has the power ones, from what I can think of. So that's really cool. We have some nice ambient lighting here. Again, some good textures and stuff like that. The seats are really good. You can move them a little bit. It's all the way back right now. The front's almost touching me, but I think it's because it's like in the mode where it's like an exit. We do have a nice armrest with a little bit of storage here. That kind of has a little bit of a spring to it. So it feels really solid. I know I'm supposed to be comparing this to the RX, but I keep finding details that are only in our flagships, like the vanity mirror. So back here, we have a vanity mirror, and this was in the Lexus LS for the reason of having celebrities being driven around in these things and being able to like check to make sure their makeup and face and hair look good before getting out of the car, and the Genesis GV80 has it. I see a little hook here, which I can only, people in the comments are gonna correct me for sure, but I think it's a coat hook. I think it's a coat hook, or maybe for an accessory. And there's also a hook up here. We have heated and cooled seats back here and some different climates with vents everywhere back here. We have vents down there and vents for the third row as well. And, oh, look at that. I have a wall outlet back here as well as some USB-Cs. So if you were back here doing work and you needed to charge your laptop or something like that, there is a place to do so. So yeah, some amenities back here for sure. I would love to be driven around one of these. I think they did a really good job, Genesis. I'm a Lexus guy, but this is working on me. I'm not gonna lie. Okay, so I'm gonna get into the third row, but before that, I need to give everybody caution. I went to the trunk to make sure the third row would fold up, and I pressed the wrong button, and this center row came crashing down because it's like spring loaded, and almost knocked the camera out of Bhaskar's hand. So make sure you don't have like a kid back here or something like that if you're gonna press that button, because it happens quick, let me tell you, like that. So I'm gonna move that a little bit. I'm gonna step back here. There is a button on the top and the bottom, so it's easy to get there from the back or from outside. And I'm just going to climb in a little bit. It is tight, it's for sure tight. These are like a jump seat. So we're not expecting, TX level of luxury back here. So it is tight, I'm not gonna lie. My head is touching the roof, but we have amenities. I have a cup holder on each side, and the cup holder itself is like trimmed off in some like chrome decoration. I have a vent right beside my face. I have two vents right beside my face. So it's decently equipped. It'd be great for kids. And you have your own little glove box on each side, which is cool. And there's climate control back here. So we have auto climate control, and you can change if it's going at your face or your feet. So that means there must be a vent at my feet somewhere back here too. So it's tight, but it's good back here. And we got speakers back here too. Bang & Olufsen with the actual metal grille. So yeah, if you have kids, this third row is super useful. If you're gonna have an adult back here, maybe look at one just a little bit bigger. TX size, Denali size, something like that. But still good enough, not gonna lie. It's not too bad. Okay, so now back into the RX, where I'm so familiar with. So it's easy to like pick out the differences between the Genesis. First thing that comes to mind is my theme and layers. So definitely the inside of the RX feels like there's more layers to it. You know, everything from the dashboard being layered to the fact that it's not just one screen for the nav system and the gauge cluster, I guess you can say. Space-wise, I mean, they're both gonna be pretty comparable. We have some different textures, like we have Alcantara here kind of like on the door panel, but not the same on like the A-pillar and the roof, which is still like a soft material. We still have a good size armrest, very similar layout here on the center console, although we have like a shifter instead of that turn knob. And then our phone holder kind of is like deep tucked away. That Genesis one actually being up was kind of nice. And I'm now realizing something. So as manufacturers go towards that Mercedes S-Class style screen where it's just like one wide screen, I do realize it gets rid of a little bit of the detail in the difference between one screen to the next. And what I mean by that is for so many years, we were used to like a gauge cluster that had needles that, you know, would rev up and textures and dimensions to it and stuff like that. With the Genesis one, even though it's really crisp, it's flat. The Lexus has a bit more dimension to it. It's still screen, but the screen looks like it's physical, I guess you could say, which is, I know, kind of silly to harp on, but that's how close these cars are. I mean, we have this really luxurious seat here. I have, you know, thigh support, and it maybe does feel a little bit sportier inside. I think that's part of that extra size that the Genesis has. But overall, I mean, executive Lexus RX versus that, in terms of like amenities and layout and stuff like that, they're really similar. I mean, they both hold their own for sure. Okay, so back in the back seat of the RX, okay, the amenities are a little bit different. So for instance, I have a curtain here, but it's manual. I mean, to each their own. It's not as much as a flex of the powered one on the Genesis, but it's still there, it's still cool. We still have the Alcantara, we still have the electronic door latch. Armrest that comes down with storage and cup holders. I have heated and cooled seats back here as well, and a couple buttons to be able to do that. I don't have the wall charger like in the Genesis, but I feel like my space might be a little bit better used. I don't know if that's just in my head. I noticed I could recline this one back more. So maybe it feels a little bit more comfortable in some areas, like the way the seat reclines, but it's missing a few of the amenities. I think technically there's more headroom in the Genesis, although even here, I'm not bad at all. So again, both mid-size level luxury for sure. So let's talk about the engine on both. The Genesis that we reviewed tonight has a twin-turbo 3.5 liter V6, pushing out to 375 horsepower, which is a beast. The RX 350 is like 275 horsepower. It is like 400 pounds lighter, so interesting to see usable power, because if there's anything I learned in my 30s versus being in my 20s, is that horsepower on a piece of paper doesn't mean a good drive versus a bad drive versus even a fun drive. I would probably compare it more to our RX 500h, which has a few more ponies under that hood, definitely closer to this 375 horsepower. And with that, there is some other things that Genesis as a brand is doing right now that's really interesting. And again, I think they're doing this to really stand out from the other luxury brands or keep up with them. For instance, fixed pricing. Genesis do not allow discounts. So whatever you see is the price, no ifs, ands, or buts. And in that price, I think it's 5 years of maintenance covered. With a brand like Lexus, you can get that with extended warranty at a cost and cover, you know, years of maintenance. Although with Lexus, I don't think they needed to do that too often because it's a very reliable brand with a really low maintenance cost. And in Canada, as far as I know, and I don't know if it's just certain models of Genesis, but that fixed price also comes with a set of winter tires, which is a big value because these are all things people think about. When you buy a new vehicle, you're thinking about, okay, I gotta spend money on winter tires. You're thinking about, I gotta do maintenance costs. And if you've never been into a Genesis dealership, they are super cool in their own. We just opened up the new Genesis store here in St. Catharines, and it is super cool inside. It's almost like some dark colors with like some lounge areas that remind me of like a modern living room. Even how you do business there is a little bit different than your traditional dealership. It's almost like a boutique. Reminds me of like a boutique hotel or a boutique fashion store, something like that. So Genesis seems to be doing it right. And that's why I wasn't surprised that so many people in my comments and on my Instagram were saying, do the Genesis lineup, do a comparison, because it's definitely bringing its own flavor to an already very competitive luxury auto market, especially with the big guys. So let me know in the comments below what you thought of the GV80. Message me on Instagram if there's any other comparisons you want me to see. And a big shout out to Genesis Niagara with Rain and Brian and everybody who made it happen, me being able to film this GV80, and I think I'm gonna do the GV70 next. So we'll see what happens then. I'm Dustin Mason from Performance Lexus in St. Catharines. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.